Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on FM 105.3 New Orleans, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. I'm Jenny Nicasio, along with my co-host Sean Kelly and Jason Ian Petro and Trisha Moe. It's going to be a good night, guys, and I want to let you know that you can leave some comments for us. We'd love to put you on air. We'd love to discuss. You can see us on YouTube, Pittsburgh Paranormal, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and a few others, I believe. So how's it going, guys?
Hey, happy
Hanging
Torture
in.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Torture Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Maybe we might
fine.
get lucky and not have a Torture Tuesday. Maybe everything will go smooth.
Nah, what
Oh,
fun would
no.
that be?
Trish, what do you think about that? Yeah, it's been
Always expect the best, right?
well, we're gonna
Yeah.
try to have a good night. I mean, we're into the middle, the 12th of October, and so that's
Mhm.
good.
Yes.
Just bear with me. I'm a little congested.
A little
Oh,
sniffly.
Silly. Yeah, so I hope we can have a good show tonight. Anything going on with you guys?
Nothing. Just getting ready for Halloween. Dealing with customers. Hell, they got Christmas stuff going on now in my store. So
Yeah,
they
it's
usually
like-
wait for the day after October, like the day after Halloween. That's when they put the Christmas stuff in. They got it going on now.
What do they call it? Happy Hallow Thanksmas? Or something like that?
Never heard of that.
Hello, Thanksmas.
Hello.
Never heard of
Well,
that before.
Yeah.
Well, how do you prepare for Halloween, Sean?
How do I?
What?
Oh, I get my my costume. It says generic Halloween T-shirt.
Oh,
And
Decorate
I
your
just-
house?
Budget Ninja
No,
costume.
my brother does. My brother does. In fact, it looks pretty good this year. So I might take a picture and post it up on Facebook. Check it out.
What I
Jason-
like to do is I usually wait till the day after Halloween when all the candy's 75% off. And I'll just go scoop up a bunch of it.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
about it.
What about
We're on the main road. There's no kids. They'll get run over. It's too dangerous.
Trish, what do you do?
Well, my daughter and I actually we dressed up as clowns last week and
That's not good.
took scary pictures
Can't
and
see
No.
clowns will eat me.
Mm-mm.
street lights and stuff. So it's-
Clowns are not my favorite.
No.
No.
oh, they're not
neither.
mine either. So
Clowns and baby dolls. Baby dolls. You know them porcelain dolls.
Yeah.
oh no, yeah, those
No.
scare me.
Mm-mm.
My grandmother used to have one sitting on her chair in her living room, and remember, she was from Italy. It was weird because no one could touch anything, but there's this doll just sitting on her chair, and of course I had to go in and play with it. But I wonder
course.
what happened to that doll. It's probably has a lot of stories you could tell. Absolutely, a lot of
But
stories.
did you ever sit there and look at it? And did you actually almost see the eyes move?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh,
I
They'll
did like
just
to.
follow you around the room.
Yeah, she's my grandmother liked dolls. I don't know why. She who knows? You couldn't
tell
understand
you
any
what.
words she was saying though.
you can put me in a house full of demons. I'll be okay. But you put me in a room or a house full of dolls and clowns,
Demons.
I'm out of there. I will not go there.
Why?
You'll definitely have an
Why?
anxiety attack.
Oh,
I have
Lord
quite
have
a
mercy.
few. I have quite a few psychic friends that own possessed dolls.
Mm.
That sometimes assist them in like tarot readings and stuff like that. So,
Why would you want to possess dolls? Like,
well, I mean, anything can be possessed technically.
oh,
So I guess that's just their.
my soap opera, Days of Our Life.
These are adults. I
Oh
mean,
boy.
the one character is possessed by the devil. Well, I don't know. Well, I know.
I think that's like half the population. So I mean,
Yeah. So
Very
I think
cool.
we're
Yeah.
all a little possessed nowadays. But we're
I
gonna
know
really,
God, we probably are.
yeah. Well, I bet you our guest knows a few things about possessed people. It's going to be an interesting night. We're going to discuss ancient visitors from other planets. She's an author, a doctor. She has a lot of books she's published, Dr. Rita Louise. And her views and myths showing evidence of extraterrestrials. Now, you know how I like extraterrestrials. Maybe
Yes,
he's
we
my best.
do.
He's my best friend. She wrote a novel. I don't believe it's a novel. There's chronicles, and we're going to discuss it about ET Chronicles. What myths, legends can tell us about our human origin, which is really interesting. Going back to ancient aliens. It's a startling and comprehensive examination of ancient myths, legends that describe extraterrestrial visitors and their encounters with humanity and their encounters, at the dawn of time, since the dawn of times. So, it goes back into the Sumerians, and a lot of people believe that they were an alien race, but we're going to discuss that with her. So we're going to talk about the Mayans and a lot of mind-blowing discoveries that she is going to discuss with us. And she's also talked a lot about creation and gods and goddesses, heaven, the gods and their toys, their spaceships, chariots, the quest for immortality. And it could be those ancient stories, she says, of gods were more than just product of someone's imagination. So we're going to discuss with her, is it possible that writers and chronicles, scribes in distant past can actually, there's an origin, they were with the stars, and we're going to talk about that with her. So she's has a lot of credits behind her. I've noticed on YouTube, there's so many YouTube videos with her. The Phillians, we're going back to the demons, the magical world. There's so many topics that she's been on tons of shows. And I'm so glad that we can talk to her. And I like the one, stepping out of Eden. Did extraterrestrial visitors mold us into what we are today? But I feel sorry for them, because we were really molded into something. But without further ado, I'm going to bring our guest, Rita Louise. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks
Hello,
for having
Rita.
me.
Amazing.
So can I tell you my haunted doll story?
Yes.
Sure.
Since you were talking
Welcome to
about
Torture
dolls
Tuesday.
before, and it's one of my favorite. I mean, I used to do ghost hunting. I was the group psychic. And so we were called to this woman's house because her 6-year-old was like writing like rune letter things on the wall, and she didn't know what was going on. And so I'll just get to the good stuff. I mean, there was a bunch of weird things that happened at this woman's house, but I'm giving her a download after like going through the house and seeing like this face drawn on the bathroom counter, and the eyes were following me. I mean, it was just really creepy. And she goes, "Well, what about the doll?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean the doll?" And she goes, "Yeah, in this bedroom over here, there's a doll on the shelf." I'm like, "Didn't notice it, so let me go check out the doll." And I walk in the room and I look at the doll, and what I hear in my head is, "I've got a secret.
Oh my
I've
God.
got a secret." And I'm
out the door. I'll be
because
gone.
even though I do ghost hunting, I'm like easily spooked. So I go to the lady, and she goes, so what about the doll? And I just looked at her and I said, "Well, what it said was, I've got a secret." And I repeat that, and she said, "My daughter says that exact same thing in the exact same way." And I go, "Well, then what happened?" She goes, "Oh, she'll do things like stab me in the leg with a fork."
Oh my.
Jeez.
It was
Damn.
like, she goes, "What should I do with the doll?" I'm like, "Get rid of it." That was before like it was big selling haunted dolls on eBay. So she probably could have made some good money.
Yeah. Yeah, you could buy Dybbuk boxes off eBay and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
You
That's
get
crazy.
anything on eBay.
Right?
I saw something about a guy selling human bones like thousands of human bones that he had acquired from estate sales and stuff online.
That's pretty
Really?
metal.
Yes.
That
I
is
thought that
metal.
was illegal.
That's metal.
You would think, but I guess he acquired them legally it was bones that other schools and places didn't. I mean, I think he's a teacher or scientist or something. Maybe that's how, but still there's been a huge discussion, obviously.
That's creepy.
That creates a little bit of conflict, I would think.
I'd like to buy a femur, please.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and they don't. A lot of them, they don't know where they came from, or I mean, it's crazy.
Well, tell us about your book.
Okay, so the book is called E.T. Chronicles: What Myth and Legend Has to Say About Human Origins. And what it does is, or what I did, I'll just say it this way. So what I did is I decided to take a survey of myths from around the world to see if there was a narrative that came out of it. Early on in my research, and this is what really led me into this whole inquiry, it was when the Mayan calendar hit, December 21st, 2020 or 2012, there were a lot of TV shows that were talking about it. And I remember this one in particular said, the Mayans talk about this date and they talk about it in the Hindu tradition, but they just dropped it. They didn't go into what the Hindu tradition was. They just made this one-liner. And I thought it was interesting that there was a parallel kind of narrative that came out of India, because if you have something in America and you have something in India, that's a big geographical distance to have two stories that are coming true at the same time, to me. And but then I did research and it really wasn't congruent with the Mayan calendar thing, but what I discovered in that was this story about this guy that gets on a boat, and while the world is being destroyed, and the narrative sounded a lot like the Noah story. And I had heard over the years that there were multiple flood stories, and you can't see now the little italics in here, that there were multiple flood stories around the world, but your general assumption would be, if I have a flood in my town, it's my flood story. If you have a flood in your town, it's your flood story. And there should be no parallels. There shouldn't be any similarities in the story because they're different. They're different situations. And so that's what I really started researching, were these myth flood narratives from around the world. And what I found was that there was a parallel, and I literally, I got a notebook, and I took the major, righteous man is warned of a flood, that was one talking point, build an ark, releases a bird. And I figured that I would fill pages and pages and pages with different variations of the story, or they would be completely different, or I really didn't know what I was going to find. And after this whole search, I was able to summarize the bulk of the flood myths in literally 2 or 3 sentences. There was a righteous, virtuous, or pious man, pick your adjective that you want to give to him, who is warned of an impending flood. He builds a boat, an ark, climbs on a leaf, climbs up a tree, climbs to the top of a mountain. The flood happens. In some stories, an animal, some are birds, some are other animals, are released to let them know that the water's receded. He's on the boat or the mountain with his wife. Sometimes there's an old man. And that's the story. And so you can kind of take which pieces, and they make the different narratives. And I just was flabbergasted because there's the same kind of if you tell a story, and I'm just trying to think of an example, but of course I'm not coming up with one right off the top of my head. But if you tell the story of Santa, you always, no matter where you go around the world, it's there's always kind of this basic narrative. Santa was this guy, he lives at the North Pole, he hangs out with elves, he has reindeers, he flies around on December 24th, and boom. That's the Santa story. And that was really what came out of these stories. And so I was like, okay, well, if that's the flood story, where do we start finding these parallels in other myths? So I started digging, and I decided that it would be appropriate to start with, like in the beginning and work forward in time. And what I found was that there were parallel myths that covered big, major milestones in history, including the creation of man up until the floods narrative, that were very consistent, or there were maybe 2 or 3 major themes that came out of it. But in some of the stories, you would have 2 themes. Some of them you would have 1. Some of them you would have all 3 of the themes mixed together. And so it appeared that, kind of like the telephone game, there was this bigger story, and it kind of got whittled down into these small chunks depending on what the culture was, but the nugget, the essence of the story remained.
So you think things are what kind of like extraterrestrial, like an ancient Sumerian race has a parallel to something else? What is there anything that you can
So what I found interesting is that when you look at this mythic narrative, humanity, all right, in the book, humanity doesn't come into the story until the second to last chapter, like right before the flood. And so everything prior to the formation of man were these stories of the gods. Were these magnificent beings with these magical weapons than the chariots that flew all over the place. But if you think about it, when we think of God, all right, I'm a Trekkie. I'll preface it with, I'm a Trekkie. So when you think of God, you think of somebody like Q. And he can snap his fingers and a mariachi band can appear, and he can, it's a true story. I see it on TV, or he can like wave his hand and the whole Enterprise could end up, light years away in some other galaxy somewhere else. And that's cute. But when you look at these stories of the gods, they have weapons, they have technology, which tells you that these individuals that they're talking about in these stories were not omnipotent. They were not able, they weren't miraculous. They didn't have magical powers. They had technology where, in antiquity, when people would listen to these stories, they seemed like magic.
What do you think about that, Jason?
It's definitely interesting. Here's a question for you. Couldn't the gathering of like all these parallel myths just be evidence that there is a God, maybe not so much as ETs?
But why would God need technology? And I'm going to kind of circle back, but I'm going to start with that. So one of the things that you find in these stories, so there were 4 or 5, depending on the culture, but we're going to start with 5. There were 5 worlds. So in the Mayan culture, they talk about 5 worlds. In more European cultures, they talk about 4 worlds. And I can explain why there's 4 or 5. Well, actually, I'll explain why there's 5. And so in the first world, it talks about this cosmic egg, going through the void and going through darkness and going through the abyss. And it was inhabited by, in some cultures, 7, in other cultures, 8 progenitor gods. And so they went and inhabited this dark world, the first world, which I don't think was Earth. I pulled a rabbit out of my hat and said, well, maybe it was Mars, because there are the pyramids on Mars and the face on Mars. And when I kind of dug into that, looking at the timeline, Mars actually really fit into this timeline. But there was a disaster event. There was a destruction event. But at the same time, there was also a battle that happened between these progenitor gods. and their offspring, their underlings, kind of depends on the culture, whether they're biologically related or, my feeling is that there was these progenitor gods, and then there was actually a separate race of beings that actually fought for control. Because when you discuss what these gods look like, so like the fertility gods, for example, they're described as being half man, half snake, half man, half reptilian.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take the verbal description and not the visual description that we see in art, a half man, half snake could actually, in today's context, be a reptilian.
Mm-hmm.
Versus centaur, upper body of a man, bottom part of a snake. One of the other groups, which like Zeus, for example, was a sky god. He lived in the sky, where Kronos lived in the underworld. And he's always described as being white complected with a white beard, always bossy, always in charge, and so that could be likened to the Nordics. They talk about a race of giants, and not the 7-foot giants, but these giant, as tall as trees and as big as mountain giants. So big giants. And then there's descriptions, and this more comes out of Indian text, although you do find parallels in other texts, of this race of, they call them monsters, and they just have weird shapes, weird imagery tied to them. But like in Greek, and they're always tied to like building stuff, they build the technology. And in Greek cosmology, they have Hephaestus, who was the builder, but he was deformed. He had a deformed foot. So there's still this like something wrong with him mentality tied to it. So even on the physical descriptions that they give these gods, they don't look human, and how could we come up with these, we're talking about stories, that were written down. Okay. And there's the oral tradition that we know goes back way, way deeper in time, minimally 2500 BC, and so what would they know about reptilians and these monster people and centaurs unless it came from something that they knew? And actually talk about genetic engineering happening in underground bases, where they would make these chimera things, and so, when we think of God, God is invisible and doesn't interact with us in that way.
Sean, what do you have to say about that?
I'm just intrigued, to be honest with you. Right now, I have nothing to say, and that's not out of being mean or nothing like that. It's just that personally, and to be honest with you, I'm trying to comprehend on what you're trying to tell me, and I'm getting a little bit of understanding what you're talking about. And
Trish?
I was trying to look up the lyrics to this song. There's a band, I believe they're from Norway, called Wardruna, and I can't pronounce the song title, but it's translated to Healing Mountain, and it's about Odin and the journey of the human mind, body, and spirit up this mountain and through water and everything that you mentioned earlier, being in kind of another parallel with Odin, I guess, and the Norway gods.
In different cultures, mountains were often tied to places of healing, especially going into the mountain. So you have sites like the Bosnian Pyramid, and they have found that people that have gone in during their excavations, that, their knees bothered them or whatever, that they have come out actually feeling better. And so in Japan, they have that tradition that there are certain mountains that are considered healing mountains. Same thing in the Americas. not really an area that I put a lot of research into, as far as this book is concerned. But there is that tradition that, the mountains have healing properties, or certain mountains have healing properties. And so that would make sense to me why they would make, there would be a tradition in Norse cosmology of tying, the gods to mountains and healing.
That's
Very
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're talking about mountains and healings. I know whenever I'm feeling down and when I'm not doing good, I go to the hills in Pennsylvania, especially out in Cook's Forest and all that stuff like that. And it must be true because when I'm in the hills or mountains, whatever they are, I just feel like I'm being rejuvenated. Like I'm just really like it's like I'm with nature and nobody around, and I'm just bringing in all the energy from the trees, the animals, the plants, the waters, whatever's in there. So, I agree with that. Mountains and hills, especially in Pennsylvania, that they do cleanse me. They do bring me back down.
Well, and different places have vortex energy tied to them, and I'm just going to make a personal comment, Sean, is, I just get the impression that you're pretty sensitive to what's going on, and just the ability to get away from everybody, gives you a chance to kind of rinse your space out, and then you can be in your space all by yourself and not with everybody else.
True. I agree. I do need to be by myself. Thank you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rita, let's talk about the dark angels that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you mean dark angels, are you referring to demonic angels, like demons, or is there some other kind of dark force?
So a different interview came up, which was just it was an hour-long debate about that title. And it was seriously? It was just a good title, and so, when I sit there and talk about dark angels, really what I'm talking about ghosts, so if you sit there and you talk and discuss non-corporeal beings, you can have spirit guides and angels and whatever on one end of the spectrum, and then you can have your basic everyday ghost, grandma comes to visit, and is hanging out, but then there are ones that are intention, which is something that I really speak a lot about, which is attached entities, and then there are ones that literally are demonic, or I've also interacted with what I would call extraterrestrial aliens because they do not take on human corporeal form. Pretty rare encounter, but they're really weird and they're hard to deal with. And, as I like to say, they don't speak human, because it would, all right, back to my Star Trek thing. Humans are human. And so regardless of whether you can speak Japanese, you can convey a message to someone that only speaks Japanese because we all speak human. But if we're trying to interact with someone that's a Klingon, they don't speak human. They come with a whole different value set. They come with a whole different mentality. And so trying to interface with them and understand what they want and what they need and why they're attached to someone and hanging around them all the time becomes a bit more challenging. And I'm very empathic to people's feelings. And so some of them don't really have feelings, and so tacking into why they're there becomes much more challenging.
So when you have all these encounters with these dark angels and everything you're talking about, is there a certain place you're at when this happens, or you're on a investigation trying to find answers for somebody for something, or is it a dream state, meditation? How do you personally have all these encounters with the dark angels you're referring to.
They're my clients. I mean, I've written on it, I've done videos on that topic, and so unintentionally, this was not the path I was planning on going down in my life. I have a lot of people that come to me and want me to do entity removal work. And it is actually fairly common, but having an entity attached to you these days has become really kind of a knee-jerk catchphrase for my life isn't going well, so I must have an entity attached to me and creating all this bad luck. 20 years ago, it's like, oh, well, it must have been a past life. And everybody would write everything off like, oh, well, I have this past life karma that I'm clearing now. And, today it's, I have an entity attached, and sometimes, your life just sucks. And you're working through stuff.
She's right. She's right.
It's just sucking right now.
Throwing all kinds of lemons, make it lemonade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think, are you guys familiar with the concept of thought forms?
No, I've never heard of that one.
Okay, so a thought form is when you believe something so strongly, you can actually manifest it into the physical world.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So people that believe in curses, like I don't deal with cursed people because I don't believe in curses. So I just can't get into that whole, you created this for yourself because now you're worrying that you have this curse and, it's impacting all of your life.
Robert the Doll.
It's
Robert the Doll.
Yeah, that reminded me of that.
And so with this like connection to everybody having an entity attached to blame everything on, I think people have created thought forms that support this thing happening, and they may or may not actually have an entity attached. And then they get attached to it and they don't want to let it go. And it just
Yes.
It's
How
just
about
weird.
the type? Now I've dealt, I've been in the business for over 30 years and I've dealt with entities and stuff like that. And a friend of mine who taught me, she said that, and I believe it said, if you're totally negative 24/7 and angry and you just have so much negative energy, that the energy of all that negativity coming out of you actually forms your own little.
Yeah, you just keep attracting more.
Yeah, it just forms. It's a spirit without a soul. Do you know what I mean? It's just a blob of blackness that follows you everywhere around. Have you heard of that before?
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
It's really hard from a psychic point of view to separate out what's actually an entity and what's a thought form. And I'm getting better. One of the things that I've noticed is that if it's a thought form, it's not as defined, because usually I can sit there and go, it's a male, this is his age, and get pretty clear information about, who this person is. Not that I think that they would know who it was, but, pretty clear information. And if it's a thought form, they tend to be kind of like a shadow spirit, they're kind of wispy, and I do a lot of energy work. And one of the things that I'll do when doing entity release work is ground the spirit. And if it's a thought form, the thought form will actually just ground out and disappear. Where if it's an entity, they're like obnoxious and they don't go anywhere.
So I was going to ask the same thing. I was just discussing this with someone yesterday about, I'm an empath and psychic and medium, and I've noticed a very distinct difference as well in over the years of a thought form. I didn't know that was the term for it, or an actual entity, because of the way other things in that person's environment react as well. It could be kids or animals or things like that have a very, especially animals, their reaction to a thought form versus an actual entity is very distinct. I don't know if you've experienced that as well. Like
yeah, I don't really, I don't go into these
clients,
people's houses,
right.
so it's like I don't really have that kind of interaction with them. But I could see where it would be different because they're not the same.
Right.
And I think a lot of people misunderstand that grandma could be visiting, or your dead twin brother could be visiting and watching over you. And that's okay. They're not like some evil, people have activity in their house and it freaks them out, but it's not necessarily bad activity. It's,
True.
I lived in this house and there was Tom, the guy who lived in the backyard. And so he like lived in the house and didn't die in the house, but lived in the house till he died. And he was very meticulous about the backyard. And when I bought the house, it had like these manicured bushes and it was beautiful. And then my ex-husband and I moved in and half the bushes died and the yard always looked like crap. And it was, I would lose the dog in the tall grass. I mean, it was just not good. Well, Tom lived in the backyard because that was like his space. And so and he was a shadow figure. So I just feared, I just saw him. But then my kids were like, what's that in the backyard? And my ex-husband's like, well, what's that in the backyard? But they lived with me. And so they were kind of used to my weird stuff. But then I had other people that would come visit and they're like, Rita, there's somebody in your backyard. And I'm like, it's just Tom. And they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But you are definitely right about, me and Jason, he's part of the group. And we go to places where I'll get calls or he'll get calls. And we talk to the people. And what today's Hollywood and TV has done about putting all these scary movies out and stuff like that, everybody that we talk to, every client that we go to, thinks they have a demonic presence in front of them,
Right.
And then we go in and it really isn't demonic. You know what I mean? Like you were saying before. So I blame Hollywood and I blame the TV shows for putting all that into the people. Well, there was that one movie that came out, The Lady in the Black Dress. I remember, and we were just like, the next day I got like 30 emails saying that everybody has the woman in black dress in their house. And I'm like, I was after the 30th.
You should have showed up to their house in a black dress, Sean.
So,
and
yeah, I blame
stuff like that is
that.
really like a blessing and a curse because it raises people awareness. And so less, I've always been pretty guarded about sitting there going, well, I do ghost hunting, or I like work with people with ghosts or I do psychic stuff because, it used to be really taboo. But now if you say to somebody, oh, well, yeah, I've done ghost hunting, they're like, really? Tell me about it. And so it's changed the mentality, but it hasn't really given people real information.
Right.
And so it's kind of a blessing and a curse in that way that people are more aware that ghosts are real, but they don't really understand the real nature of them. And then they just get scared.
Yes.
Because they're,
I agree.
I'm going to say,
like Sean said, a lot of people think, it's demonic entities. And I don't even think we've really encountered any actual real demons. It's always been, it might have been a previous homeowner or a relative or somebody, or a grumpy spirit, just a grumpy spirit, that came through a portal, just causing some stuff. But as far as actual demons, finding them, I don't think unless Sean's found a couple, like I personally haven't encountered any actual demons. I've encountered poltergeist, but not actual demons yet.
Well, dude, when we were at the Blair House, did we not, would you consider that demon when we were down there?
So that thing was weird. Like, that's hard to describe what that was.
It would have been an alien. It would have been one of the dark angels that you have.
Yeah.
No, I don't see When I think of a demon, I think of an angel that's really hideous with wicked wings and sharp teeth, and that's what I think when I think of a demon. Not a dog
Uh,
with webbed feet.
that
Well, I mean,
wow.
they'll
I think
present
that thing
in a lot
grabbing
of
your toes
different
in your sleep.
ways, but to me, it's more about their emotions and their intentions. And so, in all of my years, and I've worked with a lot of people that call me about entity issues, I have had two or three that that I would call full blown demons that
Really?
I would even classify, and that doesn't even count the alien ones, which are weird. This is what I would consider a full blown demon, and I've had one possession.
Mhm.
So it's not really
No, was it a
that
typical
common.
possession like you see on
Did you have to call an exorcist?
yeah, like The Exorcist? Like,
Were you
Well,
yourself possessed, or was it a client?
it was a client.
Okay.
So this was like when I first started. Well, it wasn't when I first started my business, but this was like before I started doing the ghost hunting, before I really started doing any spirit release work. So the universe brings you what you can handle. And
that's
so
true.
he actually contacted me because he was having an issue about weight loss.
Well, what?
And it was a guy, and talking about woo-woo things with guys and chakras. Maybe we'll go there, maybe not. And
Boo.
and so,
That's funny. That's a good one.
and so he's talking to me about the weight loss thing, and so I'm looking at him, and I was like, I go, okay, well, I don't want to be weird here, because I'm open to whatever their body's going to tell me and whatever I'm going to see. I go, but you have this wormy thing that is sitting in your stomach,
Oh my.
and it's controlling you. And I go, so it's not that you can't eat, it's because you don't want to eat. And this thing is making it so that you're not hungry. And he just looked
That's
at
what
me
I
and he
want.
went, exactly.
Wow.
Thankfully, he was like an Edgar Casey guy, so I wasn't, he didn't go running from our conversation. It was actually a really good conversation, and at that point in time, I really didn't have any tools to help him or support him or refer him or to do anything other than go, yeah, you got this wormy thing. I mean, it was just weird because it was like right in his belly button and had this big old round head
Oh
with
my.
eyes. And
Oh,
I'm not
wow.
an alien.
Alien, yeah.
But
Little baby popping out there.
usually if an entity is attached to someone, they will sit inside the auric field and be right here. They do not come inside the body. And so when they come into the physical body, that's when you have a possession. Like when someone channels, like Ramtha or whatever, they will bring the spirit into their body. And so if you don't want the spirit in your body, but it's there, you be possessed.
But you'll be surprised that there's a lot of people out there that I have talked to and dealt with that want that to happen. They want to be possessed.
Why?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, why would
Good
you
for
want to do
you.
that?
Like it's a new trend or something.
Well, there
I
is
don't know.
this new trend they call walk-in spirits, that people want. They consider it their ancestors, and basically the same concept, as channeling. But then there's the people who don't know a lot about what they're doing and try to invite that. And I think that's where it kind of gets.
Well, and that's, I mean, a lot of the clients that I've had, that has been the issue. They have, all right, I haven't had any Ouija board people, which is fine.
I was just going to ask about that.
Well, and I don't even think Ouija boards are that dangerous. It really depends on your intention. But I've had several people that did automatic writing, and several people that were trying to do channeling, and I won't mention this person's name because they're not doing this work anymore. But there was a very well-known author who would tell people to call their angels in. If something's going wrong, if you're having a bad day, call your angels in, but if you're having a bad day, what you're looking for is to get information and answers from a vibration that's higher than your vibration. So you could be calling your angels in, but you get Fred the janitor that's on a break. And but it's true, and because your energy is so low, and your auric field isn't protecting you, and you have no boundaries, you can call in some terrible things if you don't know what you're doing. And so and I've said this on countless shows, it's like, don't do it.
Well, is it the same thing as asking your guardian angel for assistance? I mean, if you say my guardian angel, wouldn't you get your guardian angel instead of Joe the plumber or something?
Not necessarily.
No, I mean,
if it's a negative entity, and it's narcissistic and it wants to suck energy off of you, it'll be like, hey, I'm your guardian angel.
Oh, shit. Hey.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Let's like chill.
What if you call like Michael, Archangel Michael? You're going to get Archangel Michael, aren't you?
Not necessarily.
No. Really?
Mm-mm.
There are some people that actually make that connection, but they work on that connection while they're in a good place and when they have good energy. And so they recognize that vibration. But if you're in a bad place and you're doing like the 11th hour, I'm calling in Archangel Michael, it might be Michael, it might be
Michael from
Detroit.
What's that?
Yeah.
Michael Myers.
Michael Myers.
Well, that would be kind of fun, having Michael Myers hang out.
But no,
but once they come in, it's like, depending on what's going on, they can be really challenging to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'll just stop there. Somebody was asking something, saying something.
I was going to say, when I was younger and I didn't realize that that's I wasn't intentionally doing any of that. I was attracting, anytime I would channel or automatic writing or anything like that, I was attracting a lot of negative entities. I mean, every house I lived in when I was younger was, I thought was haunted. Well, they were haunted, but I was attracted. So I thought all entities were bad and scary. And I'm sure much like a lot of your clients until, and we've talked about this before, until I changed my perspective on it and embraced that and learned how to protect myself when doing those things. And also learned, how to raise the vibration in my house, how to raise the vibration in my own body, stay healthy, things like that. So I was no longer attracting these negative entities, because they do a lot of, people don't realize how much damage they can do, to your household, to your, kids, pets, mentally, physically, all of that. So that's a huge, and people aren't, I don't think no one's aware, because no one like you said, it's very taboo. So people don't like to talk about what they're afraid of. And especially publicly, to other people, and for something that so many people don't necessarily believe in. But, as I always tell people about interdimensional entities and spirits and everything like that, it's the same as it's like my dog can hear thunder before I can. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I've never seen a hurricane, they still exist. So it's one of those things but yeah,
I've never seen my gallbladder.
Right.
Yeah, interdimensional energies are the worst, in my personal opinion, because they just leave. You try to work with them and they just like, I had this lady and she had these interdimensional bugs. They were like dragonflies. I mean, they were some kind of bug, and they would just fly around her space and like land on her and fly around. And, I'm like doing this, killing these bugs, and they would just like open a portal and fly into her aura. And it was just like, how can you stand this? And, but there was some, I believe that entities attach to you because there's some lower vibrating thought that you have, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, nobody likes
Right.
me, whatever that thing is. And they will come to that, that lower vibration that you're carrying and be attracted to it. And so, unless you really address what that is and heal it, you really can't get rid of it. And then
Which
people
is a
have the
good
belief
deal.
that, they come for one session and it's fixed, and it's not.
Yeah, they like to feed off of different energy, especially negative energy.
Exactly.
The worst encounter, I ever had was, we dealt with a poltergeist here after moving in the house, and it was pretty malicious. It was destroying the house, making the dogs crazy, and that's when, back in, what was that, Sean, 2012, I think.
2012. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
because
you
then I
joined
joined a
in
group in
2013.
2013. Yeah,
Yeah.
so had Sean come over with his group, and we ended up having to get rid of it, and we did, luckily. But that's something that, a lot of people, you don't want to mess with that. So you don't want to invite anything in, or, open yourself to whatever, because you don't know what it could be. It could be,
True.
it could be somebody
Well, look,
happy, or it could be something vicious like that. It
I mean,
varies.
they know how to lie. They
Yeah.
do lie, and look at the world today, where all the bad that's happening, and how a lot of people are depressed. And I mean, those entities are just like feeding. I
Oh,
mean,
exactly.
off and that's why I believe that when you say, like, when some situations occurred in the government, I'm not going to go there, but everyone was so mad and upset, and they're releasing all this energy, and then all of a sudden people were getting attacked, people were getting attached, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, if everybody could be happy for one day, maybe they'll go away. That's the way I was looking at it at one time, because
Yeah,
it
good
was
luck with
just
that.
I know, but it never happened. But it just seems like with the world today, it's just too much negativity, and as well as everyone else knows, that they just feed off that, and they clamp onto somebody, and then their life becomes hell,
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
Well, and it's the same with people. I mean, the happier you are, you're going to surround yourself with happy people. If somebody who's negative surrounds themselves with negative people, and it's because either way is contagious. Happiness is just as contagious as negativity. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
usually
didn't.
If you're happy and clap your hands. Yay, Jenny.
And one of the things that's been going on recently is, we don't know what's going on, and so we're in this constant state of not knowing and fear. And, I feel like people are developing trauma and will literally end up with PTSD, or are having PTSD because of everything that's going on. Because when you live in a state of fear and uncertainty for a long enough time, it imprints on you,
Right.
but it also, and I'm going to get a little technical here, it makes it so that your body can't ground. And so you can't release the things that are happening, and so it allows the fear to build up. So like Sean, when you said, like if you're having a bad day, it's like you go out into the woods and you can just relax, and all of that negative stuff you're walking around with, you get to let it go. So, but if you're locked up in your house and and you can't get out, and you can't be around your friends, and you're worried about money, and you're worried about this and this and this, it's like it just sits in your head and you just ruminate. But it makes it so that you're not grounded, and that just opens the door to anything that might be traveling by that wants to attach.
Well, if anybody wants to see Sasquatch, I'll let you know what wood Sean's in. Take some pictures.
Well,
Yeah.
what's your insider guide to ghosts? I saw that you mentioned that in your bio.
Yeah, so it's my book, Dark Angels, an Insider Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities. And so it's broken down into 3 parts. The first part really just talks about ghosts and ghost hunting, and the difference between residual haunting and an active haunting, and it gets into like ley lines and vortexes, and I tell my stories of the haunted dolls and that, to sit there and give examples. And I don't know, the stories are pretty funny actually, because if you knew me, it's like I will not go into an unlit room by myself, like
Really?
Nope.
You won't?
And doing intuitive work, it's like I can see ghosts with the light on. I am good. If something slams, I will jump if the lights are off. I mean, I just get spooked. But if there's a ghost in the room, I'm fine. It's just weird. So that whole portion is written from like this person who gets totally spooked, who's dealing with these ghosts, that the ghosts don't bother me, but everything else does. But then the second part really gets into an in-depth discussion of the concept of attached entities, why they attach to you, how they attach to you, how you can recognize if you have an entity attached, but it's really kind of in a generic thing, which sometimes I wish I didn't write it, because now people are like, well, I have 3 of these things. I must have an entity attached to me. And then the third part of the book talks about, if you have a haunting in your house, what you can do about it. Do you want to like make friends with the ghost? Do you want to get rid of the ghost? Some tools that you can use, some basic tools about dealing with an entity attachment. But my recommendation is, if you have an entity attachment, that like a personal entity attachment, that you should really get someone to work with you, because it's next to impossible to be neutral to a negative entity, because you just want to be mean to it and yell at it, and
they
it
love
ain't
that.
gonna go.
They feed off of that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I always got intrigued with I might be pronouncing it wrong because it was in my books, my trilogy about aliens. The Nephilim, is that how you say it? Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know what that is, and it goes back into, I believe, in the Bible they talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give people who don't understand it and how it relates to extraterrestrials? I don't know if you believe it, but give us your take on them. Because I know my take, and I just want to see if it's similar.
Well, I have a very opposing view to what many people suggest.
Okay.
So the Bible says, and hopefully I'm quoting this correct, and if not, please no nasty cards and letters. But it says, in those days, the Nephilim walked the earth, and then the sons of God mated with the daughters of men, and their offspring were the Geborim, the men of knowledge and renown. Okay, so that's the quote. And so the word Nephilim is from the Septuagint, which is Greek, and it means giants. Okay, and so if you sit there and look at this history, which the Bible does support the history that I present in this book. However, you can't have like this God fighting that God in a battle for the earth with multiple gods, because there's only one God. So you lose a lot of context, but the core concepts are very consistent. And so if you look at the chronology, there was a race of giants, which were the 7 to 9 foot, 12-foot giants that were created prior to the creation of humanity. And so it would make sense with that statement, in those days, the Nephilims, quote, giants walk the earth, and so I think that that's a true statement. And then there's the concept of the sons of gods and the daughters of men, and I battled with that one for a really long time. I didn't have an issue with the Nephilim concept. And I was just like, okay, well, it's just some weird biblical story, and it's only like 2 paragraphs, little paragraphs.
Yeah.
But then I found a parallel, and I'm all about parallel stories in the Ramayana, which is an Indian text. And without giving you the whole Ramayana story, which is long, in it, there was a race that were called the Vanara. And they were a mix of godly lines that were mated with the apes and bears of the earth. And so Vishnu, their supreme god, knew that Rama in the future would be having a battle with the demon god of Lanka. Okay. And so Vishnu told the different gods that they should come down to the earth and mate with the apes and bears of the planet, which has been interpreted to be ape-like men. So my thought is maybe they were mating with Homo erectus, or some very, very early species of humanity. Because we're talking, somewhere between 2 million, 2 point something million and 780,000 BC. That's kind of the window we're talking about. And so in the biblical story, the sons of God, which are gods, come down and mate with the daughters of men, which are humans. And in that story, the gods come down and mate with these ape men. In one story, God suggested that it happened. In the other story, it's considered a very untoward event. But the net result was that in the biblical story, you have the Gibborim, the men of knowledge and renown, but they're demigods. I mean, if it's the sons of gods, they're demigods. So in the Ramayana story, these Vinara, these half god, half men. So if your father was the god of architecture, then you had these advanced engineering abilities. One of the named characters in this story is Hanuman, and his father was the god of wind. And so it gave Hanuman the ability to jump very vast distances. So he was able to jump from mainland India to the island of Sri Lanka in one leap. And so they had these superhuman abilities because of this mating of gods and men, and advanced knowledge.
Do you think there's some living on Earth now? Half?
You mean hybrids?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That would be
possible. I don't think that the gods left. The way that things seem to appear in a lot of these stories, especially once humanity was created, was that they would kind of do upgrades. They give us the next level of technology. They gave us fire. They taught, and then there's a big window. And then they taught us how to do agriculture and use plants for medicinal purposes, and then there's another big window. They gave us bows and arrows, another big window. They taught us how to build structures. And so it seems like there's a very cyclical process because you have these points of very high creativity, and then it drops down to practically nothing, and then another peak. And so there are those that suggest in the UFO community that, they're still here. And to be honest, it's like based on their cycle, which has been, every 5 to 10,000 years, I mean, they're kind of due, that I'm not an experiencer. But there are so many stories of people that, were used to create hybrid humans. I haven't ever personally met a hybrid, but I don't doubt that that's necessarily possible.
So, for anybody that's listening and stuff, what would you recommend for people that are interested in getting involved with like mythology and everything we've been talking about? Is there like a certain starting point that you would recommend, like start here then work your way to like this kind of thing?
Well, they could just get my books. I'm saying that in jest, even though they could buy my books, which
right.
I'm kind of an interesting character in that way, is that I will read like some of the most boring books. Like I actually read the entire Ramayana, which was at 3 volumes, all written in verse, and found it interesting.
Wow.
And so I like reading dry, boring books and then writing about them. And so, I spent hours and hours and hours researching and taking a nugget from here and a nugget from there and getting books off of archive.org. there are a number of modern or contemporary writers, especially about ancient culture, that, in my humble opinion, put too much of their opinion in and do not provide very much data and documentation. And so when I was doing all of my research, I was looking for books that were written by the early ethnographers, so the British people that went to New Zealand in the 1800s as part of the European expansion, and the people that did that writing, because that is the closest to source that we're going to find, because the indigenous people didn't have writing, and so we have no books or documentation that come from them. And so I always would look for and source the oldest piece of literature I could find. I think one interesting place, and I can't remember what it is, but if people are interested in the Sumerians, there's actually a site, and I don't remember the site's name, that has actually a number of the tablets translated online, that you can access and look at. So that's kind of cool. There's just a lot of material out there. You just have to be willing to dig for it or look for it and, find it.
Rita, what can you tell us about reincarnation? I know that's a topic that you discuss in some of your books.
Actually, it's only in one article. And so reincarnation is the belief that when we die, we come back, and I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it, because, I've seen people's past lives. So I'm guessing, must come back based on my readings, and I don't make stuff up. I see what I see.
So you read, you can tell what people were in a past life. Is that the kind of readings you do?
If they ask, I will talk to you about anything except dead people. I'm not a medium. Every so often, if someone will ask me, I'll be like, okay, who do we want to talk to? And sometimes I get information. Sometimes I don't get information. I don't promote myself as a medium, and so, yeah, I graduated from the Berkeley Psychic Institute, so doing past life reading was part of the training. So
how do you read someone's past life?
Yeah,
do you put them in a trance or what?
No.
No.
Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, talk. Can you
It's
give
how
Jenny
all my
a past
sessions
life?
go.
Can you give Jenny one, please? Please.
Jenny, we can tell that Jenny is basically
wants
asking for this reading without saying, "Hey, I want this reading, please."
Oh, you're reading my mind.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, I have the belief that we have multiple past lives, and sometimes we recycle really quick, and sometimes we take really big breaks. Jenny, what you're showing me is a past life where you were, and I don't know if you were on an island, but you're showing me a beach scene. It is warm. You are a man. You are hunting after some kind of an animal, like a rabbit type, but small. I feel like the way people looked at you, and the way that I do these is, what am I getting? What did I bring forward that I'm accessing from this past life that I'm utilizing in the present? And so I feel like from this past life, you are, the benefits from that is you're able to be really focused. I feel like you will go after a goal unflinchingly, and that you can be fearless in what you do, and if there's something that you want, you're just going to go after it, get it, and achieve it, and so some of that information and education you gleaned from this lifetime, as some kind of aboriginal-y kind of person that lived on a coast somewhere, because it was a sandy kind of looking beach.
Interesting.
So talking about past lives, I've seen and heard before that birthmarks are essentially where you got wounded in your past life and could have been cause of death. Is there any relevance to that, or is that just a bunch of humbo jumbo?
So there was, and again, I don't have this person's name, but there was a scientist, I want to say in the early 1900s, early to mid 1900s, that had done a bunch of research into individuals who had birthmarks. They were usually children, and he would talk to them, and they were in India. So they have kind of a different mindset about the whole reincarnation thing because they believe it. And they were able, so the individual would give them information. It's like, oh yeah, this, I got, an arrow shot into me or whatever. And the child would provide information, and then he would go and research it and find out that that is in fact what happened. And sometimes there was one story of this little kid that had a very clear past life recall and actually went with this guy to the house that he had lived in, and he knew the people that lived in the house and was calling people by name, even though theoretically he had never met them before. And so, yeah, I mean, it is a much more common belief in India, in the Hindu tradition of that happening. So there's the belief if you're born with a birth defect, like if you're missing a hand, it's because, in a past life you were a thief and they cut your hand off.
Oh.
And so, we don't carry that tradition in the West. And so there really hasn't been any research into that.
So I have another question about past lives. I remember a long time ago, I was talking to somebody about reincarnation and everything. And their theory was that you're reincarnated every 400 years. Now, do you know if there's like a certain number of years? Does that seem accurate, or it could be thousands of years?
I mean, I don't think that there's any set time limit, it's 400 years. It's time for you to go again. What I have seen is that, people will recycle, during periods. But what was interesting that during the Dark Ages, a lot of, and I haven't really done a whole lot of past life readings in a really long time, but it just seemed like during the Dark Ages, it was like nobody really wanted to come back, so there was kind of a break. And then when the Renaissance hit, it was like, hey, we're good. Let's go back. And then sometimes people just take breaks for extended period of times. They might have had a past life that was really challenging, or they're just not really digging what's going on the planet and just want to, not go there. There's a belief that, and I kind of have read this, where people actually incarnate on a different planet, and be part of a different species and then come back to the earth, or then there is the reverse. I've read some people where they've incarnated on the planet once or twice, and they really don't, on a fundamental level, understand what it means to be human. And they just feel really out of place. They just want to go home, and they don't understand how people operate, and you talk to them and it makes sense because their spirit is like, I don't belong here and I just want to go home. But then when you talk to them, it's like they feel like there's something wrong with them because they just don't get people. And it's like, well, it's because you've only incarnated here once or twice before. And so you haven't really been fully indoctrinated into what it means to be human. I mean, because many people on this planet have incarnated since, the planet began, since human life began. I mean, there are some major stepping points that you see with that.
So with all the spirits and ghosts that are roaming the earth and, we investigate and everything, do you feel like that a lot of them are spirits waiting to be reincarnated because energy is not created nor destroyed? So we're just transferring energy, into the spirit world, and then later on they come back as another human or the same person hundreds of years later, whatever. And how does that fit with like, does heaven and hell like fit into this theory at all? Or, like, is there so many spirits that might go to either of those places, or to be reincarnated, or like it's just it's a lot of stuff to
I know.
try and think about.
And I was having this exact conversation about heaven and hell with a girlfriend of mine 2 weeks ago. I don't know how heaven and hell fits into this whole thing. I mean, because it seems like you should either have heaven and hell or reincarnation.
Right.
And so from a very fundamental level, it's like, okay, another Star Trek thing, that when we die, we change our frequency and we move into a different time space continuum. And so they can see us, but we can't see them. So now we have everybody moving in slow motion. And so if that's what happens to us, which makes it so that grandma can come and visit, then, I mean, does grandma hang out in heaven? Is it like the neighborhood bar and she goes there and it's like, I'm going to go visit my kids and travel across town? I don't know. You know what I mean? I just don't know. There was the first part of the question, but I don't remember what it was. So I'll just.
Trish, do I have anything to say? You're quiet.
She's on mute.
So I know an interesting thing, which I'm actually currently studying because I'm not to that level as a hypnotherapist yet, is the Akashic records. And people are able to access that or past lives through hypnosis and hypnotherapy, which is really interesting, aside from having somebody read that or access it in that manner, or having a dream or anything like that. So that's something that I've currently been studying and hope to be able to do one day. I have had one session myself being hypnotized to access that as well from my past lives. So what
did you come up with?
I think I've been here a few times because one of the stories, when I was from the time I was probably 2 or 3 years old, I had dreams and would tell my parents about being a man in almost medieval, armor and dying in a sword fight in battle. And it was very detailed. I could tell them, the location, things like that. And so that was one of the things that I had my hypnotherapist try to. Then you have to go back to different timelines and things like that specifically. But that's one of the ones that I wanted to know more about because I had dreamt of it my entire life. So
it sounds like me that I had a dream that I was on a beach during either World War I or II, and I was killed by a grenade. I can see this. I can still see that the man who threw it was over a fence by a green garbage can. I keep having the same dream over and over. It's very vivid. So it sounds like yours, Trish.
Wow.
Well, and I think that it's interesting when people have something like, I got blown up by a grenade, with a guy throwing it over the fence, because you hear all of these stories. It's like, oh, well, I was Cleopatra in my past life. And it was like, well, how many Cleopatras were there?
Right.
In any past life regression I've done, they have never been particularly flattering stories.
I had one done, and I was one of the witches back here in Salem, and instead of going, no, I'm serious. Seriously, I had one done. I was a witch, and I was drowned.
So you did wear a black dress. You did wear a black dress then, Sean?
No, I didn't wear a black dress here.
Just a pointy hat.
Now, on that note, speaking of people, a bunch of people stating they were, especially in recent years, stating they were Mary Magdalene or Cleopatra or whoever, Queen Elizabeth, you know what I mean? Like, what is your theory on that, I guess?
Well, I mean, I think that people can be suggestible in doing hypnotherapy. So every so often, and I'm talking about every so often, when I'm doing work with a client, the issue that they come to the table with is tied to a past life. Because I can sit there and it's like, okay, you're having this issue today, but where did it start? And I can timeline them back. And if I timeline them back to birth, and I can even take them in utero. And if I can get all the way that far back, and I'm not picking up that anything happened in utero, then I'm left to believe that it was a past life issue. And so, I'm saying this really clear. So in my career, I've had 3 or 4. So it's really, my feeling is that if people have past life issues that are affecting them, they usually have enough crap to work on in this life that dealing with past life stuff, you don't need to. Fix this first and then go back. And so my clients will ask me, it's like, well, what was going on? And I might get information, but what I have learned is I do not share that with them because I don't want them to go in there with this preconceived notion that I was a knight and I got stabbed and that's why I'm having this shoulder pain.
Right. That's understandable. Yeah. That's a good deal. This has been pretty interesting. You don't know how much I appreciate you being on tonight. I really do. I'm serious. It's a nice change.
So just out of curiosity, am I setting off any vibes of like any past life stuff? I've never had any kind of reading, so I'm really curious, to be honest with you.
Same here.
What did I do?
Do you really want me to say it out loud?
Oh.
Do it.
Do it.
I gotta hear it.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this question, Jason.
Sure.
Stick with me, kid. So, have you had issues with feeling like you've lost something? Like not, like there's something that you really want, but it becomes unattainable. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I see the point of it, but I've always are you talking like physical, like going and getting something I've been after kind of thing? Is that or
okay? This is what you're showing me, and maybe it's something that's going on right now.
Okay.
And I'm a little embarrassed to say this out loud because you're going to be embarrassed. Well, no, you're going to be embarrassed by what I'm going to say.
Oh boy.
But you're showing me this picture of a little girl, maybe in the 20s. She's probably 4, 5, 6 in that area, and blonde hair. She's wearing a blue gingham dress, and she lost her doll, and she's very, very, very upset. So that's why I was asking you about the loss. So I don't know if that's something that's, because sometimes I'll see past lives about something that's kind of going on very contemporary, as opposed to Jenny's where it's like, really, this is who she is. But that was the first one that jumped out at me, was just this emotional pain because it was her baby, and so, so I don't know, you don't have to answer me. I don't know if that's resonating with you on any level at all.
Not right now, currently, no.
So he was
My turn.
a girl.
Jenny, you were
My
a guy.
turn.
Sean was a girl. He was a witch.
You were
I was a male
girl.
witch. I was a male witch.
So that means Trish was probably a dude.
My turn. My turn.
Go ahead,
Go.
Sean.
No, what's he picks up?
What?
She's concentrating.
I thought Pap said something. Sorry.
Okay. So, and I have to, I'm real visual, so I have to sit there and put words with what I'm seeing. But I get the impression that in one lifetime you were a Franciscan monk. And I'm coming up with Franciscan monk because he had like that bald spot thing back there. And
That sounds like you, Sean.
And you know, and you lived in kind of a monastery, you know, and you enjoyed the solitude. You enjoyed the ability to just go and read. I could possibly see that in that lifetime you might have done some scribe work, but I don't feel like that was really your main thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that really resonated with you in that lifetime was working in the gardens and growing things. That was what really resonated with you in that lifetime. So I don't know if that's come forward with you. I mean, the solitude part definitely has come forward. I don't know if you have this, you know, fascination with things that grow.
I do.
Not necessarily the work part, you know, but just the miracle of nature around it.
Well, I will tell you this, though. I did go to high school to become a priest.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I did. Yeah, I did. That only lasted a year and a semester, and that was it. And then I came back to the real world. But yeah, Franciscan monk. That's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds pretty spot on.
Well, there's one of us left.
Yeah, there's Trish.
All right. She was an alien attached entity to
I mean,
to Jason. Now, in a past life. Just kidding.
Damn redheads! I tell you, you know.
Well, you know, but see, sometimes people have really interesting, weird past lives, and I think Trish, I'm gonna give you one of those. So I get the impression that there has been a period of time in your past that you actually incarnated on the fairy plane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's where you lived, and you know, actually, you know how we were sitting there talking about like incarnating every 400 years, you know, and it's like that. Sometimes you take a break from like this human thing, and I feel like you were taking a break from the human thing, and we're incarnating there. And I feel like you were actually there for kind of a while in different forms, you know, whether a fairy, you know, or a plant diva or whatever. You know, they're not really giving me any specific because you're like flittering around like a little fairy there.
So if I lose a tooth, will you bring me some money?
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that, because even in this life, you know, as from the time I was a little girl, I've always, and other people, natives and spiritualists and psychics, and everyone has always told me that, and I felt it myself as well, that I've been very protected by forest spirits and fairies, and even numerous different types, you know, and I've always closely related to plants and animals and things like that, as far as the trees, you know, everything like that. So that makes sense.
Well, and I'm just going to kind of follow up with that. You know, you bring a lot of wisdom about how to interact with that energy into this lifetime. And so I feel like you're kind of like looking for your place. And that might be more your place because it becomes very innately to you, that knowledge and that wisdom, because it is you.
Yeah, it's nothing I had never studied it. It came naturally, you know, and it always has. So
Sounds good. Jason, don't you have something to say?
Yeah.
I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what you had this morning with your coffee?
Oh, well, thank you, Jenny, for reminding me as I'm sipping on some of it right now. We would like to send a thank you to Carnation for sponsoring our second hour of our show. We appreciate it. It's delicious. Make sure you get out there and get yourself some. There's Jenny showcasing some of their fine product. Be sure to get your Carnation.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, Doc, I'm gonna call you Doc. I forgot your name. I'm
It's right
just
there in
so
front of you, Sean.
I know I
Dr.
can't
Rita.
see because I'm blind. I'm
You got your
blind.
glasses
I can't.
on. You better not
I'm
get behind the
blind.
wheel of that car tomorrow. Shit.
I'm blind. I have no hope. No. What really I got you started in this? Did something personally happen to you that got you on this path? Maybe you said it before. I don't remember. But what got you going on writing books and stuff like that?
Well, it was definitely not what I was planning on doing with my life. But, things go mysterious ways. So I'm just going to blame it all on my mom. So
Okay.
growing up, so you know how usually you get your allowance for like doing chores around the house kind of thing. So we didn't get an allowance for that. We had to read a book every 2 weeks and we would get our allowance. And even as a little kid, I was not interested in reading fiction. So I think I've read one Nancy Drew book and just really didn't enjoy fiction. And so, I was in 5th grade and started devouring the archaeology and anthropology department at the library. And I went to Catholic school, so it wasn't very popular. And I would turn in a science fair project, about the tree of life, starting with algae and all these branches with humanity at the top. Yeah, I didn't get anything. And then, so then I date myself, but there was a TV show, and some of you will recognize it, that was The Amazing Kreskin. And he was a mentalist, and he had ESP, and he could read your mind. And it was like a variety show. And so I love that show. And then there was another series that played around the same time, which was called The Sixth Sense, which wasn't the movie. It was Gary Collins played a college professor who ran the parapsychology department at the college. And so he would go into a room and he would touch the glass, and the image, the ghostly spirit of the dead person would appear and give him a clue as to who the murderer was, and he would go somewhere else and get a psychic impression that, Mary is going to get in her car and she's going to drive down Highway 1 in California, down those swervy roads and fly off into the ocean. And he would stop her in the nick of time. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And so I decided when I was about 12 that I wanted to be psychic, and moved from the archaeology and anthropology department in the library to the psychic department, which was about 20 books, and that's it. It was next to the witchcraft stuff, which was like really off limits. And and I've never stopped, So I've been studying this material for forever, So doing psychic, metaphysical stuff has always been a passion. Archaeology and anthropology, which I put myth into that category, has always been a passion. I grew up in a haunted house. It spooked me then. They still spook me now. And so it's all good.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're
that.
welcome.
That was cool. But what about you, Jen?
I'm just seeing if there's any comments for Rita before we let her go
Any
for the
listeners
evening.
have any questions? Now's your
Yes.
chance.
Yeah. Anybody? Quiet
I
out
don't
there in
even hear
comment
crickets.
land.
It's a quiet night.
Yeah.
Where's
Well-
Augie and Russ at? They were in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they got questions.
Well, Rita, we're going to let you go for the evening.
Thank
and
you,
thank
Rita.
you so
Yes,
much
thank
for
you so
joining
much.
us.
Thank
It was
you.
such a great you
Well,
were
thanks
such
for
a great
having me.
guest.
You guys were fun.
Yeah, you were a great guest.
You were too. You were a blessing. You were a blessing.
You have a
Yes.
great evening and happy Halloween.
You too.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Have a good-
Bye.
Well, that was great. She was really very interesting.
Very informative.
Yes,
Very.
she was.
Yes.
I have to say that I found her to be so articulate, and she had a lot of I can't spell it. What's the word?
Charisma.
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 Yeah, we'll have to have her back on.
I love that.
It was a very interesting show tonight. So, guys, what do you have lined up? Any
Well,
investigations, or you have any?
yeah, this Saturday coming up on the 16th, we're going to do a private residence. Somewhere over near WTA, in Millville, around that way. Millville.
Is it a private resident?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
What do you think about
And
that,
the
Trish?
22nd and 23rd, we're going to be down at the Marcos.
No,
For the
what is
ghost
that?
Um,
walk.
Is that a restaurant?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
restaurant.
No, are they doing like a whole investigation?
It's like
Well, this
groups of
good.
people come in for like we'll take people. There's a ghost walk that goes on in Uniontown where people go around,
That's
check out all
right.
these haunted places, and DeMarco's on one of those stops, and people will come in, and whoever's there from our group will take small groups and do a small investigation for about 15 minutes with them, give them a little history about the place, and it's kind of interesting down there because when you get to the upstairs, there's actually a noose in like a
what?
chase way, a rope noose
Really?
that somebody actually hung himself on a long time ago,
goodness.
and it's just remained there ever since. And you could just feel the energy up there. But a couple years ago, we had a lot of success with different methods with K2 hits and the flashlight method with people coming in. It was really cool and it was exciting all at the same time. So we're looking forward to that.
So
Yeah,
I just realized this in the last few weeks. Actually, I was going to mention when it comes to communicating with spirits that have died by hanging or
Okay.
by like decapitation, they come across much differently than other ways of dying. I guess it's
Huh.
very strange. But it's like
Huh.
it's a much stronger energy because probably, especially if their spinal cord was disconnected or their brainstem or whatever,
Jeez.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
That's possible. But that
Or
ghost
because
walk,
it wasn't
then,
natural causes either,
Right.
true. Now, Jen, if you could get your son to take you down there, that ghost walk is very, very. It's a good ghost walk.
Yeah.
What they
Do
do is
it.
they take you to like 7 or 8 different places in the town of Uniontown, and they tell you the ghost stories that are involved. Like another haunted place down there is the State Theater. We actually got to investigate that down there, and it's pretty haunted.
What is it? A theater?
Yeah, that's called the State Theater in Uniontown.
We should try
It's
and get
an
back in
old-
there because I wasn't there. I don't think I
Oh,
was in the
no.
group. Yeah, that was before.
No, you weren't. No. That was way, really, really haunted. But when we did the Abel Colley Tavern, the first year that Uniontown had that ghost walk, that was part of the ghost walk, but you had to drive there, which is like about 1.5 miles away from Uniontown. But
Right.
it's really something. Bring your son down and have him take you on that walk. You would really enjoy it.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, really.
People out and about, and you can grab something to eat, something to drink, have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, people
Me and
bring
Sean
their
will be in
children
there.
with them.
It'll be past
Yeah.
our bedtime, but we'll be there.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to pull up your EVPs. I want to see if we can play them, but I'm having a hard time getting.
Did you hear those, Jason?
I kind of heard one. The audio quality, I think, wasn't the greatest.
Well, that was back in 2006.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I'm trying to. I have to send it. Trying to get the code. It's kind of hard because I have to go through 100 different emails.
I mean, on the now the third one, I didn't understand that, but when you hear the one where you hear the girl's voice saying, "I love these houses" or "these houses something," that was done on Blue Mist Road. And if you know Blue Mist, there's no houses except that one that sits up the street. When you get to the crossroads, there's one, but you can plainly hear that girl saying, the houses, something about the houses.
I tell you what, I'd like to live in that house that's in the woods right there. That'd be a sweet place to live.
That would be really sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, you know that mailbox that's on the road going
Yeah.
down there?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's their mailbox.
Well, I figured that.
And every time they go down to get their mail, they find all kinds of crap in their mailbox.
Yeah, probably because the kids go up there and
Hmm.
I can't do
we
it.
all know how teenagers are.
I don't think you're
Yeah.
going to be able to hear it on my computer. We tried this before. For
Right.
some reason, it doesn't. And then my phone went dead. So let me
Hey,
see.
Trish, what are you going to do for Halloween?
Oh gosh. There's so many things I want to do on Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. So
Right.
probably I usually end up going to a cemetery somewhere just because, that's what we do. And not out of disrespect at all, but because the veil is still thinner right now. So a lot of times I'm called to different locations like that for no reason. There's always a reason, but.
So basically, you get into your car and go, and wherever you end up is where you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
That's
And
interesting.
then it'll turn out that whatever message I get there ties to so many things that came to me during the week or, a few days prior or whatever. So
it's like a
You
calling.
pass out candy?
it is like a calling.
It's okay.
I usually take, do something with my kids earlier in the night, but because they still dress up, I don't usually stay home and pass out candy. They go trick or treating or to family functions, things like that. But then after they're they crash from a sugar rush and everything, I go I go do my own thing. So
That's cool. Jenny, how about you?
I'll probably just I'm gonna
Hang out here in my house, sip some carnation with my coffee.
Yeah, my kids are gonna come over. We're gonna have bonfire and I'm gonna
That's
try
cool.
to I'm gonna see if I have this here. I don't know if you can hear it. Tell me if you hear anything. Wait. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
I just hear the static.
I just hear the static.
That's all that. That's your.
Is that the no?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, don't
Nope.
hurt me. That's the don't hurt me.
Yeah, that's the one that's not good. I couldn't hear it in there. The other two though, the girl's the second one about the houses.
Here, let me see if I can pull.
You know what we should do there, Sean, is we should send Jenny some of our like class A EVPs and really good
Okay, I'm
ones.
playing something. Can you hear that?
Yeah. No.
I hear a clock.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Let me turn it up.
No.
No comprende. I
Yeah,
didn't hear it either.
No.
You know what? We could send her some of our EVPs that we've gotten recently, and somehow she can put them on.
There's got to be a way. It's 2021.
Right. Do you use EVPs, Trish?
I am like,
She is an EVP, right?
Oh yeah, but
She's a digital recorder.
No, that's what I was looking up though. I was going to say years ago, before I ever embraced this part of myself of attracting spirits, I used to use this generic phone app that came out during when smartphones first came out. I think it's called Ghost Radar, and it was actually really.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah,
like it was really accurate, and it to a point where back then I didn't believe in anything like that because I was in denial, and but things kept happening over and over, which I guess spirits, if you're not paying attention, they could find any means of communication to get a message to you, but that was probably easier. than other methods for me. But yeah, so I've never used any type of equipment other than that before I actually knew what I was doing.
Right. But what about people that want to hear some of the stuff, like when I talk about it and Jason talks about it with other people, that that they just want to hear it. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, like at the Bigfoot Festival.
Oh, yes. So I do. There's time, it's so common in my life for these things to happen that it's not, I don't think anything of it. But I have started, occasionally I'll take pictures of something just because I don't have to prove it to myself, to prove it to somebody else or to somebody
right.
old or whatever. I will do that occasionally, make a video or use pictures, things like that.
So Jenny, when are you going to come on a ghost hunt with us?
The 22nd and 23rd down in Uniontown.
I hope you do make it.
I'm
telling you, Jen. Seriously, I mean,
you don't have to be
scared. The whole walk takes about an hour.
No spookies are going to get you.
No spookies?
The whole ghost walk is about an hour.
I don't want no ghosts coming after me.
Oh, come on now. You got me and Jason here. What are you talking about? Like that's going to happen.
Well, if it's her or me, I'm rolling, so I'll leave you behind.
But no, even if you don't go down for that ghost walk, and somehow, because Uniontown is like, it's a really nice old haunted town, and DeMarco's, they have the best food in town. I'm telling you, it is so good. And when we go down there and work at it, 100%, 100%. 100% good. Everything they have down there. Their wings, burgers, steaks, and they're reasonable price too.
Like steak or your kind of steak?
They're steak.
Russ will get that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have the best crew in the world, Jenny. I wouldn't trade them in for nothing.
Maybe some real steaks, huh? It's an inside joke.
He's in the mood. You're getting late, man. It's time for your bedtime. So.
Yeah, 5 o'clock comes early.
I get to work late tomorrow, so I can sleep in. Trish, you ready to do the show next? Or you don't want to if you don't have to.
Oh, tonight?
Yeah. You don't have to.
You tried that last week and then you couldn't make it, Sean.
Sean.
I'm sorry.
You're supposed to.
If you don't want to do it. If you don't want to do it.
Her a reminder.
I did. I asked her everything. You know what? Well, how about next week?
Okay.
You said that last week.
Well, kind of, but then he went like MIA for a while, and
Yeah.
So I didn't know.
Yeah,
hey, you want to be on my show after the show?
I had a bad week.
I'm not going to show up to the show.
I had a bad week.
Yes, I didn't know.
So next week we'll do it. Okay.
Okay.
Can you guys hear this? Wait, let me see.
Those are some nice pillows.
Can you see? Can you hear that?
All right, now here's the clip again with captions.
Can you hear?
Again, I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, I hear it.
Question marks, and I'm going to play it a few times for you. So here we go.
I don't hear anything.
I hear stuff, but
I heard a door slam or something.
What is that? I don't know. But it sounds like it's in the room with us, and it also sounds kind of strange. It doesn't sound like a normal voice.
I thought it sounded like
just when it comes to these EVPs, I've noticed that they have like a very strange, almost like a phasing sound to it. When things are out of phase, it has a weird sound, and I'm not sure if that's where these voices kind of hang around. Because I know that they're just under a frequency or above. I would say probably above a frequency than we can hear. And that also explains why when you hear certain EVPs, like say someone's got an EVP in a mausoleum. Mausoleums usually made of like marble and granite and stone, those kinds of things. And the echo in those things are just remarkable. The reverb is insane. And a lot of times when you hear EVPs in buildings like that, you can hear the room respond to it. And the reason why is because even though the sound is just out of our frequency of hearing, the room is...
Let me see if I can get it again.
What's the date? Do you live here? What's the date? Do you live here?
I can't hear it.
There's a lot of warble
What's
in the
the
background.
date?
All right, now here's the clip again with captions. And what I'm hearing is more than one spirit responding to her question. Sometimes they're a little bit more audible than others, but I'm definitely hearing what I'm putting up here on the screen for you. So here it is again.
Do you live here? What's the date? Do you live here? What's the date? Do you live here?
Yeah, I don't know.
The date.
I don't know either.
I don't hear
can't-
anything, but it could be because we're through a broadcast or whatever. But I don't know if any of you noticed, but if you listen to that warble in the background,
Yeah.
that's all digital audio noise, or like using a noise suppressor to try and make whatever's coming through more clear. So it's just, to me, it sounds
It's
like
not a
there's
pure
nothing there.
EVP.
No,
It's not a pure one.
Let me
Yeah.
let me see one more, and then we'll
Right
have
up next to
go.
the camera, and it's with
They pass so I can go a little bit.
Who is this guy? Did you look him up on YouTube, Jenny?
Yeah. I
Are
heard
you
that.
mad that I'm here? Are you mad
I hear music.
that I'm
Yeah.
I
here?
hear
Yeah.
music.
There's like a TV or something playing.
Yeah.
It's like
So that's another
chimes.
thing. When to
all right. So
properly
this
do,
clip is interesting to me because
Go ahead.
to do a proper EVP, you need absolute silence. Even like refrigerators, a furnace, an air conditioner, anything can cause all kinds of rubbish in your EVP. And that one there, you could clearly hear TV or radio or something. So it's too hard. That's
Yeah.
just my opinion.
So I was going to
And
say
then-
also, I don't know if you guys use, when you use video, one of the main things that I will do occasionally if I'm trying to, if I can see the spirit, but I want to try to catch something on camera, which rarely I do this. Usually it's by accident. I'll take a video, but if you take it in slow motion, it's much more clear, because even with orbs and stuff, the Merkaba is too fast. That's why it presents itself as that to our eyes, because we cannot see something that moves that fast. So it looks like a ball of light.
Yeah.
You slow it down, it's kind of like hummingbirds. You slow them down, you can actually see their wings. You can see things like that. So I'm not talking about slow the video down after you take it. I mean, do it in slow motion while you're recording it.
See, what I like to do is like movies and shows and everything are recorded in usually 24 frames per second. These modern cameras, a lot of them go up to 60. So when I set up like cameras, I'll use 60 frames per second. And it kind of looks weird as a person, because like when you move your hand, you just see your hand rather than the movement.
Right.
You would see with 24. And trying to catch something in that frame because it's so fast. But I'll have to try the slow motion thing, see if anything will happen. I know my cameras will do that.
So all of those, when you just see orbs or lights or whatever really, really quickly that you catch on camera might present as an actual apparition or full body figure or something else if it was slow to begin with. So.
Okay, folks, we got to head out. So it was a great show tonight. Thanks again for tuning into Chasing Prophecy. Have a great
Thank you,
rest of the
everybody,
week.
for joining
Good
us
night,
for
everybody.
Torture
Yes,
Tuesday.
Good night.
Good night.
Sleep tight. Don't let the Sean bugs bite.
Shh, wait a minute. I have to
The
figure
Sean
out
the monk.